Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to look at creating a crate in Maya and then taking it over to Substance Painter to texture it. So let's dive right in. All right, so I'm just going to make a simple crate inside of Maya here. Doesn't really matter what the dimensions are, but I'm going to do 30 by 30 by 30. And I'm in centimeters, so it's 30 by 30 centimeters. Now your home grid might look a little different here. I have changed my default grid settings. I'm at 50 by 10 by 5. I think the default is 12 by 10 by 5. So it might look a little bit different depending on your default grid settings. I was doing some animation, so I made my grid a little bit larger. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, we're not going to do any polygon modeling to this. So we're just going to do edit, delete by type history, and then modify, freeze transforms. So we have to do that step every time we want to send something over to Substance Painter. And this would be done after all the polygon modeling was finished. So right now we're just kind of imagining that this is an unwrapped crate that's been polygon modeled with this box modeling method that we've been using, and then it's been unwrapped in the UV editor. So everything's pretty much done for this, we're saying. Okay, so this one's done. And what we're going to do first thing first is we need to apply a new material to this. So let's go ahead and add that. So let's just select the object. Okay, let's do assign new material. And it doesn't really matter for this. How Substance Painter reads materials is just based on color ID, essentially, or material ID. So it doesn't really matter what we pick. I'm just going to do a Lambert here. And I'm just going to change the color to red. So it's going to cover my whole object. All right. I just want to double check that I didn't do anything extra. So edit, delete by type history, just to make sure everything's cleared out from here. So now I'm good. I shouldn't see anything over here, and I shouldn't see any values here either, besides 1 and 1 and 1 for scale. So this object is ready to be exported. So let's go ahead and export this object. So file, make sure the object's selected. File. We can do export all or export selected. We're just going to do export selection. Mine popped up on my other screen. Make this a little, whoops. Try that again. File. Export selection. Where'd it go? There it is. Okay. Mine's on my other screen. Let me try and drag it over again. I just wanted to make that window a little bit smaller. Okay. So the default is not FBX. It'll probably default to this. So we do have to change from file type. We want the default to be FBX. So you'll see FBX export. That's what we want. With that FBX export, the default settings should actually be fine. So as long as you haven't touched any of the default settings, these should be fine, and we really shouldn't have to change anything. So the preset is Autodesk Multimedia, excuse me, and Entertainment. So we shouldn't have to test anything there. I already have a test crate FBX, but let's just call this crate 01. Okay, so it's FBX export, and this is a pretty common file format that you can use across multiple different pieces of software. The other pretty common one, FBX kind of holds a decent amount of information, but in here as well is this OBJ export. That's like the minimum amount of 3D information that can be exported between different pieces of software. Other than that, those are probably the only ones that you'll really use. Yeah, we're going to stick with the FBX because we can use a lot of information. So that's it. So let's just do export selection. Nothing really happens inside of Maya, but we're just going to leave it active. And then we're going to go ahead and start up Substance Painter. One thing to note, if you're using Substance Painter on an Alienware, you need to disable your command center. Okay, Substance Painter will not work on an Alienware computer with the command center enabled. I found that out the hard way and had to do a little bit of internet searching to figure out, hey, what the heck's going on? So just go into your Windows settings and disable the command center. Okay, this is Substance Painter. So welcome to Substance Painter here. Yeah, it has some different training here that we'll look at. Online docs. Whoops. I don't know if I was over there at all for this whole video. I hope I was. But it has some training, some online docs, and a few other things that we can take a peek at. So we're going to go ahead and close that, though, for now. We're going to do File, New File, And we're going to use this default PBR metallic roughness. There's a couple other variations in there, but we want to use the PBR metallic roughness algorithmic. And then we're going to do select. And mine takes me right to where I exported my FBX, and that's what I want. Create 01, open. The rest of these defaults are going to be fine. This document resolution is interchangeable, so we can change that at any time. So really, that's it. I'm just going to go OK. So now you can see I have my crate in here. I can hit F. Whoops. I can zoom out with the scroll wheel. I can hit F over here to focus in on my unwrap. You can see my unwrap there. And a lot of the shortcuts are the same. We'll talk about those a little bit later. We don't really need those. But Alt left mouse wheel will orbit. Alt center mouse wheel will pan. And you can use the scroll wheel or Alt right mouse click to dolly in and out. So all of those shortcuts are exactly the same. Okay, so this is Substance Painter. So we have materials down here that we're going to look at and some other things that we are going to look at. But for now, I just want to reset my UI. So this is what you're seeing. You should see this exact same workspace. And I'm on the 2020.2. This is the newest update. This one just came out. So make sure you're updated. It really, for our purposes, doesn't matter. Whichever one works on your computer, that's fine, because Substance Painter is very labor intensive. But let's go ahead and look at texture set settings. So now I have my texture set settings over here on the right. And this is the first thing. Whoops, I forgot to do one thing out of Maya. And that was name my material. So this Lambert 2, okay, I should have named that like red, so we know that that's going to work. So let's go ahead and rename that red. I'm going to export this out again. So export selection. I'm just going to overwrite that crate 01, export selection. I'm going to go back into Substance Painter. I'm just going to do File, New, Select, crate 01, OK. And you'll see the thing that I changed. But right now it's just called Lambert 2, which we don't really ever want that. Now hit OK. Discard the old one. Now it's called red. So what this means is these are different texture sets within the application. So every time we add a different material to a face or a different object, that'll actually come in as a different texture set. Okay, so with those different texture sets, there's only a few things that we need to do to this, and it's over in texture set settings. So this is where we want to be. If you don't see that menu, it is, I forget which icon. I don't know if it'll show up. I can, yeah, as you close these, it'll pop up. Let me just close all these. So it is shader, display, layers, texture set settings. So it's this icon. But if you just go to Window, Reset UI, you should have the same default layout that I do. So texture set settings. And I'm going to scroll down in this texture set settings window. And the one that I want is Bake Mesh Maps. Okay? Because we can apply materials to this, but we don't ever want to do that until we bake the mesh map. So this will be the workflow that we take every single time. So the only thing that we need to change in here is our output size. And we're going to do that 1024. And then we're going to go to ID. And by default, this should start to switch to material color. On older versions, it'll be default to vertex color. So just make sure you go to ID, material color. Now, if you have multiple texture sets, this will say apply to all here. But I don't. I just have one. So it's only going to apply to that texture set. So with that texture set material color is set, I'm just going to do bake selected maps. Again, if I had multiple texture sets, which we will later, it'll say bake all, and it'll also tell you how many things are getting baked. So definitely right here, there should be apply to all, so that'll apply to all the texture sets. But I just have one, so we don't see that. And the rest of these settings, we shouldn't really need to touch really any of these other settings. If you're doing high to low poly right here, you would add those settings in there, but the rest of the settings should be fine. So let's do bake selected textures. This will take, longer or shorter depending on the speed of your machine and how many things you have to bake. I only had 7 to bake, so it went really, really quick. So that's pretty much done. So over here in the mesh maps, you can actually see it baked all these mesh maps for me. So I can see those mesh maps with the shortcut of B. So basically I have the material, the base color, which on this there is none, the height map, roughness, whoops, Oh, single channel. I'm sorry. I don't want those single channels. I'm just going to hit B to cycle through these. I don't want to look at those single channels. I want to look at these mesh maps, but the shortcut is just B as in Brad, and just hit B and it'll cycle through all of these. So you can see ambient occlusion, curvature, there's nothing, position we won't use, thickness, normal map, which doesn't have anything yet, world space normals, the ID, that's the color ID that we used from Maya, and back to the ambient occlusion. So just hit the B key. Yeah, those are under, yeah, mesh maps. Sorry, I was looking at the single channel and we're not going to see anything. Okay, so we need to look at these ones. So just B as in Brad. So really that's not super important. If I hit M as in matte, I can go back to material. So I'm back to the material. So let's add a material to this. So let's scroll down here. We'll see smart materials. Okay, so under smart materials over here, I just want to drag a new smart material on here. The one that I like to test is this machinery one, because it has a little bit of color variation to it. So I'm just going to drag this right on top of my object. You can see I can do drag and drop will be material on a mesh, and there's some other more portions that we can do as well. But for now, the material on the mesh is perfect. Okay, so I got a material on a mesh here, which is pretty cool. You can see as I kind of orbit around, remember, Alt left mouse click, I kind of orbit around this. You can see it has some of those little specular highlights in the normal maps and all these kind of different fun little areas that are automatically created for us. And if I go over to layers, you can see there's the machinery. And we're going to cover Substance a little bit later. That's not what this video is for. This video is going from Maya to Substance and then back to Maya. But you can see how this was created over here in the layers panel. So it has a rust layer, a dust layer, a dirt layer, and a metal base layer. So everything that we've been talking about. Here was the metal base. Then it got a little bit dirty. Then it got a little bit rusty. And then, then it got a little bit dusty. Then it got a little bit rusty. Okay, so that's how that object's created. This works a lot like Photoshop, and we'll talk about that later. But for now, we want to get this out, this texture, not the object, this texture out, exported so we can take it inside of Maya. One other cool thing I want to show you though is the little camera up here. Maybe will actually render this inside a Substance Painter, which is kind of cool. So I can actually hit this little camera and I can orbit around in this interactive render engine here. I can actually move the background holding down Shift. Just kind of rotate that background and then I can move the object too. So we'll cover that later, but it's a little camera icon. Okay, let's export this. So let's make sure we have the texture set selected. Let's do File, Export Textures. And that really, for now, the defaults are probably going to be fine. This is based off each texture set size. So we could make sure that it's 1024. If you have a better computer, you can do 2048. I don't really see any need to go up this high. So really 1024 is fine. Or we can just go based off each texture set. So the defaults are going to be fine. We have the PBR, Metallic Roughness. There is a cache version for this that's newer to Maya. Just doing it from cache. If you don't have that, which your screen might look different depending on version, just choose that PBR Metallic Roughness and it just won't have cache there. So right here, PBR Metallic Roughness. It's basically the same thing. I'm just going with the defaults for now and that should be fine. So the only thing I want to change is where this goes. I'm going to send this to my Maya folder. So Documents, Maya, Projects, Modeling Texturing 1. And I have this under Source Images. I already have a crate there, so I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this Crate 01. Select Folder. There we go. And export. It's going to go pretty quick, and you can see it's just exported, basically just exported a bunch of PNGs. So I have a couple PNGs that I can use here. Okay, I can do Open Output Directory so I can see these. So first thing I have is my color map. Okay. Hey, that kind of looks like a cat right there. I just noticed that. It's like a little, these are like little kitty prints. That's really funny. Like a face. See the ears, the eyes, the mouth, and the little whiskers. Kind of cool. There's another cat. There's actually two cats and a wolf. There's a wolf right there. Sorry. Okay. And then you can't really see much here, but that's the height map. We have a metallic map, which is just a grayscale value map. We have the normal map here. And then we have the roughness. Okay, so really we just have those few maps. We probably won't use the height map. We'll only use the base color, the metallic, the normal, and the roughness. So that's all we're really going to use. Okay, so we're really done out of substance. I could leave it open just to make sure that everything goes right in Maya, but I'm just going to flip back over to Maya, and let's get these textures plugged into a material inside of Maya. So I'm going to right click on this and do Assign New Material. I'm going to go to Shader, and I want AI Standard Surface. So now I have a standard surface shader inside of Maya, and I'm just going to start plugging things in. So the AI standard surface shader in Maya, I'm going to plug into the color channel here on the little checkers. I'm going to do File, and then plug this in with that color map that I had exported. So I'm not going to go there yet. I want to go to, I think mine's under Source Images. Yep, Crate 01 and Base Color. There's my yellow base color. Perfect. Let's open that in Maya. Pretty much good there. I don't really need to change any of these other settings. We'll talk about some of these other settings in a moment, but for now, that's good. If I'm not seeing the texture, I just need to click on the little textured icon here. Hey, we see the texture. All right, let's keep going with this. I can just click back on the object, go back to AI Standard Surface. Let's keep on cruising here. The next one we have a diffuse roughness, but then we have a metalness. So the diffuse roughness we're not going to use. We're actually going to plug our roughness into specular roughness. Oops, I'm not sure why I keep disappearing. We're going to be in specular roughness. Okay, so let's go ahead and get plugged in there. So diffuse roughness is going to be nothing, and then we want to do metalness. So metalness, File. It's going to turn black. That's fine. Go back up here, folder. Mine's already defaulting to my metalness. Open, I'm in. Okay, so there are a few things we need to change with the metalness. So by default, this is going to come in, and yours is probably closed down here. It's going to come into sRGB. Well, this is the black and white image, and it's not using sRGB color space. So we want to switch this to raw color space. This will just be a value-based color space that'll work out perfect for what we're using this image for. The other thing that we want to turn on is color balance. Under color balance, we want to turn alpha is luminance on. So what alpha is luminance will do while it's turned on, it'll basically just turn this image to a grayscale image, which it already is. So it's just going to use it as a grayscale image. So any kind of grayscale image or value maps that we're using, we always want to have alpha is luminance turned on. Okay, so we have color and metalness. I can crank up the weight for color to make sure that's at 1. Let's keep going down here. So now we want to do specular. We're going to do our roughness in specular roughness. So I'm going to click on the icon here, File again, folder icon, and mine came up on another screen. Pull this back over, and I have... Oh, let me get rid of these. Sorry, this is from the earlier run. We just want not the .tx, that's after it's done, but we want roughness PNG. So let's go ahead and load that in. And then color space, again, will be raw. We'll get yelled at, but that's okay. Let's go down towards the bottom here. And under color balance, alpha is luminance is turned on. So alpha luminance is raw for those value maps. Let's keep on cruising there. We'll select on this one. The next one that we'll go to is our geometry. So let's go to our geo down here. And we want bump mapping. Let's go ahead and click the icon for bump mapping, File. Now this one we have to change a few things. The first thing that we're going to change is use as bump. We're not going to use this as a bump. We're going to use this as tangent space normals. So bump is basically if we're going to use a value map for the bump map, which is black and white, but we're not going to do that. We're going to use tangent space normals. That's the one that comes out of Substance Painter, so we're going to turn that on. The effects are probably closed, and actually your Arnold tab is probably closed as well. But we want those open because we want to open up the Arnold tab, and we're going to take off flip R and G. So that's just something we do out of Substance Painter. It's flipping those R and G channels. We don't want it to do that. We just kind of want it to keep it the default straight out of Substance Painter. And that way Arnold doesn't have any control over that. Okay, this thing is pretty much ready to go now. We need to graph this network node. So we graph this material network. That's what we're going to do next. So basically, we've been working with nodes and we've created this kind of shader network here, and that's what we want to dive in and do. So let's go ahead and click on the little olive here. I call this the olive. It's the Hypershade menu. So click on the Hypershade menu. Mine came up on another screen. I'm going to drag this over, maximize it. So right now there's nothing in here. If you do see something, you can just click on this little starry graph here, or starry icon. This will clear the graph. But what I want to do is graph this network. So I'm going to right click and hold over AI standard surface, and I'm going to do graph network. This is the network that I'm working with, which is pretty cool. I think I can switch my face to the other side here. Yeah. So I'll switch my face to the other side so I'm not in the way. But I can see AI standard surface. This is everything that I've been doing here. But now I have this node-based network, and these nodes might be in slightly different order depending on your network here. But let's just start with the base color space. So I'm going to go to the base color here, and you can see this is sRGB. Alpha is luminance is turned off. Let's keep on going here. And you can see that auto-generate.tx textures, that's what it did in my file. It auto-generated those, so that's turned on. But let's go into Metalness next. So Metalness, and you can see I'm just going in the order here. You can see we have color turned all the way up, Metalness. So Metalness down here. This is my Metalness node here. Whoops. Metalness node. This is going to be raw. Okay, and alpha is luminance is turned on. Remember the alpha is luminance will turn the image to grayscale. And then we have roughness. It's going to be the same. So actually you can just click on these and make sure they're both the same. Everything's checked. Now we actually didn't load in our normal map yet. So if we click on the bump, you can see we didn't load that in, but this is tangent space normals. And you can see we can't get to Arnold here. We have to do that in the attribute editor. But you can see under file, we need to load in our normal map. So let's go to image. And let's load in that normal map. So normal PNG. This one doesn't have really too much for the normals. It's very subtle, but we'll just go ahead and load that in. And you can see it did make a change on that. But the one thing we do want to change, actually two things we want to change on this one. We want to make sure this is set to raw color space. You can see that changed, and turn alpha is luminance off for this one. So you can see the, where'd it go? The sRGB kind of changes, and I can even turn this on Arnold. It changes that color of that object. We don't really want to do that. We just want to keep it on raw color space. So I just changed the Arnold shader menu up here. But you can see that actually more in the hardware render than you can in the Arnold render. Okay, so I think we're pretty much ready to go here. So you can see there's the variation for that. Uh-oh, hopefully I don't crash here. One sec. Okay, so again, we definitely want to have that at raw base color. Sorry, I almost crashed. But you can see mine's not updating anymore. I don't know why. Oh, maybe it is updating. Oh, no, it's not. Tough to explain. Alexa said that was tough to explain. Okay, so this one's pretty much ready to go. I think we have everything that we need kind of in line now. Let's go see what this looks like with a little bit of a render. So I can close this out. And here's my cube with everything pretty much set up. I can go double check that. Remember, in the olive, the Hypershade menu up here, you can just go double check, make sure everything's right. I'm going to turn, oh, it is going to crash. Darn it. I'm going to pause so I don't lose this recording. Sometimes changing this here will crash us. It doesn't, Maya just doesn't really seem to like that very often. Okay, I did crash, but I'm back. So I'm just back inside of Maya here. I have everything set up and pretty much ready to go. I just keep turning, I wouldn't recommend turning this on. I don't know, it just seems to crash my machine. You can try it out and see if it crashes your machine, but it does crash mine quite often. So my shader network's all set up here. Everything's pretty much ready to go. So let's go ahead and dive into the render for this. I do want to make sure those ignore color space rules are turned off. Raw. Alpha is luminance. sRGB, raw, alpha is luminance turned off. Okay, so we're pretty much double checking all that just to make sure everything's right. I don't know when it crashed, but I just wanted to double check, make sure that's all right. Okay, so this one's pretty much ready to go. I'll go ahead and close this out, and let's set up a render really quick. So I'm just going to go into Arnold. I'm just going to do a Skydome. And in this Skydome, I'm going to go to the attribute editor, go to color here, And I'm going to steal from, I'm going to go to File, Folder, and then I'm going to steal from Substance Painter. So Computer, C drive. So go to your C drive, Program Files, Algorithmic, Substance Painter, Resources, Shelf, Algorithmic, Environments, and you can pick really any of these. I'm going to do Interior, Studio. Actually, let's do Bus Garage. You can really pick any. Okay. I get yelled at down here, but it should be fine. Yeah, it should be fine. We should still be able to render, no problem. So this basically Bus Garage now will light my scene, which is pretty cool. So I can move this sky dome around to light my scene. But I'm just going to do some render settings really quick here. I'm going to click on the little render icon up top. And you're going to end up rendering a JPEG. So we'll do JPEG there. I'm going to crank this up to HD, 1024. Okay. And Arnold Renderer, I can change some of these settings. I'm going to go 333. And I might bump up the ray depth to 3.2. Okay, pretty much it. System, I'm going to try to do it with my GPU. If you have a GPU that's compatible, you can do that. And I can do GPU, CPU. Other than that, I'm not really going to touch anything. You're welcome to play with more of those Arnold settings, but for now, this is probably good. I can do an IPR render. Hopefully my machine doesn't crash. But this is an interactive render. You can see we have some nice highlights and then some of the nice normal mapping within there, which works out really well. And then as I rotate this light, I'm just going to move my, I think I have enough screen real estate to do this, maybe. I'm going to rotate the background image here. And you can see, actually, if I throw an image plane, or not, sorry, not an image plane, just a plane on the ground there, you'll see the light and shadow change as I change the direction of this image. Because right now the scene is being lit with this image. So all the reflections and refractions and all of the lighting right now is determined by where the light is from this image. So it's, you know, image-based lighting solutions. So I'm lighting it with this high dynamic range image. So that's pretty much it for this. So everything is pretty much done and complete. I could just save this image out and I'd be done. Whoops, I accidentally docked that. It gets pretty tough when you get this large image on screen. But you can see that's pretty much ready to go there. Maybe I'll move this back in the center there. Okay, and I can use, which crashes my machine all the time, but I can use the Arnold renderer here and also hit play. And maybe in the viewport render, yeah. So I have viewport rendering here. I feel like this crashes my machine sometimes, but it's all right. It's pretty cool because you can kind of see it a little bit easier in real time there. Okay, just hit play or stop that. Okay, that's pretty much it. That's going from Maya to Substance Painter, back into Maya, and rendering with Arnold. That workflow we're going to do over and over and over again. So get used to that. Really just write those settings down. I have them on a Post-it sheet because, you know, they have to be written down. So write those settings down and you'll be good to go. All right, have a good one. See you next time.